Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our College 101 virtual presentations. I will be your moderator this evening, Anthony Cook, and we're going to be exploring what to do, when to do it, and how. So you can see here in this slide that yesterday, if you were with us, we discussed all of the potential pathways that you could explore. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on the application process and how to put your best foot forward for universities and such that'll be looking at you. Tomorrow evening, we'll be discussing how to fund your post-secondary pathway. And then our last evening together on Thursday, we're going to be talking about how to actually carry your plan all the way through. And as you can see, we're going to be meeting every night at 6:30. Should be about an hour long. And if you're interested in any of those other topics, I encourage you to go ahead and scan the QR code that's in the bottom right-hand corner. Give you a couple of minutes to do that. And while you're doing that, let me just talk to you about the format this evening. So once I get through a few housekeeping items, I will pass it off to our expert on the subject. And after our expert runs you through everything, we're going to pass it off to a couple of your peers. We know that y'all get tired of hearing from us older folks. So we're going to give you a little peer-to-peer experience so you can hear from them what their experience was like and how they got to where they are now. And after your peers share their stories for a few minutes, we're going to have a live Q&A session. So any questions that may come up that maybe didn't get answered throughout the presentation, we'll go ahead and work with you on that towards the end of our presentation. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our wonderful partners that helped us get all of this together. As you can see, there are multiple districts in here. We have our Avid team behind us and several state sponsors that are here supporting us that'll be answering questions in the background that have helped us to put this whole thing together in a virtual setting. So we just really want to take this moment and shout out our partners. So thank you all for supporting us in this initiative. Okay, Q&A. If you have any questions during the session, I want to encourage you to please type them in the Q&A box that you will find at the bottom of your screen. And we'll also, like I said, have time at the end of the presentation for live Q&A. So if you don't get to all of your questions, we'll bring them up there. Or if questions come up at the spur of the moment, we'll have several minutes where we can field those questions for you. I'll be on, our expert will be on, and your peers will be on to help answer those questions for you. And lastly, if you need closed captioning, it is available, and you can select that by clicking the CC logo at the bottom right of your screen. This way you'll be able to see the words that are coming out of our mouths. Want you to know that that's also available. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome our expert speaker this evening, Christine Sylvain, who is the founder of Path to College, which will make more sense to you as I transfer my screen and she brings up her screen. So Christine, it's all you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Like Anthony said, thank you for that lovely introduction. I am the founder and director of Path to College. I am so excited to be here with you this evening and to talk about the application process to college. This is really, truly one of my passions. And I just love helping students with this process. So let me just take a moment and get this application going. You all should be able to see that now. So just a little bit about what we do at Path to College. We are a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to enrich the academic growth and increase the competitiveness of driven low-income students in college admissions. So we have two programs that we run. We have a flagship program that is based where we are in Palm Beach County that does mentoring, SAT prep over a period of 3 years, as well as a ton of leadership development, internship matching, just college tours, everything that we can do to help these amazing students with high potential get into better schools with better scholarships. But we also have an outreach program, and so the presentation I'm giving you is session 2 from our college prep workshop, and it's all about the application process. So let's dive into it. Tonight, we're going to talk about what goes into a great college application, and really planning and persistence is the key. You know, you have to think of yourself as applying to college the moment you start high school. And because so often students don't recognize that when you're applying to your dream school senior year, you're applying at the beginning of the year in November. So those schools really only have your freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, in that summer to look at what you've done. So take it seriously from the step 1, and you'll be in a great position to get into the schools that you want to get to. That's not to say if you have a semester where things went south that you're not going to college. You can still go to college. I don't want to discourage anybody, but a lot of kids don't realize it's really your first 3 years that they're looking closely at. So here's some application components. You're going to have your entrance exam scores. For most schools, some schools are dropping it, but they're still a part of the bargain. Transcripts, so the list of courses that you've taken, your grades in those courses, and your GPA comes from your transcript. Your letters of recommendation, we're going to talk about that. You're going to go through the college application. You're going to answer questions within that college application. Sometimes they ask you to write a personal statement. Sometimes people call it the college application essay. We're going to talk about that in depth tonight. And then other times they ask for a sample of your work, of your writing. So there might be an academic essay that you put in there as well, and those are very important. Other schools, typically art schools, will ask for a portfolio of your art, perhaps videos of your dancing or singing, depending if you're going into the arts, or photos. Here's the very important part. So if you're applying in the beginning of senior year, November 1st is usually that early decision deadline. They're going to ask, even if they accept you at the beginning of the year and they send you your acceptance letters in February, they're going to want to see those mid-year reports. They're going to want to see the end of the year reports from your senior year. So another mistake that students make sometimes is to apply and then stop trying. And it's so much work, right? And of course, everybody gets that little bit of senioritis, but here's a little tip: is don't let off the gas. Keep going until the end of your high school experience. And then some of the more selective schools also require an in-person interview or virtual interview. So these are some things to expect. And this is not including the financial aid aspect of that application. There's also your FAFSA. Sometimes there's a STAR report from the FAFSA that they require, or a CSS profile. I'm sure you all will get into that next week, or I'm sorry, tomorrow. But these are just a few application components. So as I go on, I also want to kind of give you the landscape of what these selection committees are looking for when they're evaluating a candidate. So they're looking for, and I'm going to say first and foremost, leadership. They're looking for academic rigor. They're looking for something unique about you, and then they're taking your entire landscape into consideration. They're going to look at who you are, where you come from, what kind of school setting you were in, and how you fit within that whole, and then what type of student you are and how that will fit into their school culture. So this is how you are going to get them to want you to be a part of their school and a part of their student body, is by, really selling yourself in the college application. So as you're going through your application, you're gonna, think of it as an extended resume. Any opportunity you have to explain, that club that you did. You don't want to just list a club. Oh, I was in the Key Club. You want to say, I organized 10 different service events with 600 students who showed up to do 600 hours of community service in my community. You really want to get into your impact in these clubs. If you get an award from an organization, you're going to want to list it, but you also might want to put a description of what it was. I was honored with this as the ethics scholar because of my work in peer counseling in the school. You don't want to just list it, because you cannot assume that the selection committee knows about that award. So that's one little thing to think about. Also, leadership, I mentioned it earlier. You know, they want to see what you yourself have done. They really want to see who you are. So, you know, are you a leader if you just show up to 40 different clubs over the course of your high school experience? Does that make you a leader? No, it makes you someone who shows up. And that's not bad, but it's way better to be intimately involved in a few things and really, you know, make an impact rather than being involved in you know, countless clubs, but really just as someone who shows up and writes their names down on the attendance list. So that's something to think about now too. What can you do to show leadership? It doesn't always have to be in student government or in a club. You can also do it independently. Some students start nonprofits. Some students patent, you know, their own inventions. Other students create their own movements outside of school, like they create a tutoring club at their church, or you know, a neighborhood watch, or something that shows that they're creating, that they're bringing their unique story into the community. So all of these things that you really want to, you know, really promote yourself as best you can. It's not the time to be humble. It's a time to promote yourself. And the colleges will look at that and will assess whether you're the right fit for their school. So, you know, I mentioned that letter of recommendation, and this is where students often trip up. They are, you know, so often I get asked for recommendation letters the week before they're due or 2 days before they're due. And that's really not the best practice. The best practice when you ask for this letter of recommendation is to think about someone who was one of your teachers in preferably one of your advanced classes, one of your classes where you really showed your stuff as an academic, and who can speak to that in the letter. So you want to give them at least a month to write the letter. You want to let them know what the deadline is. You want to give them all the specifics, and you want to send your resume or what we call the student brag sheet. So it's just a list of things that you've done. So often when I was a teacher and a student asked me for a recommendation and then they had their resume attached, I had so much to talk about them as a student in my classroom. But once I saw that resume, I thought to myself, wow, I didn't realize the student also did this, that, and the other activity as well. That makes me even more impressed, and I have more to add in that letter of recommendation. And I also want to let you all know that your teachers, they really do want to help you. So don't shy away from asking them to write you a strong letter of recommendation. That's one of my quick tips. Don't just ask for a letter of recommendation. Ask for, can you write me a strong letter of recommendation? Because you want to make it clear to them that you are very serious about where you're applying and that you really want a great recommendation letter. And so that's the best practice, to ask these teachers. Make sure that you are building relationships with your teachers. If you're in 9th, 10th, 11th, and even 12th grade, really try to build a relationship with the teacher about the content. You know, help other students, go above and beyond. If you're doing well, the teacher will write you a great recommendation letter. If you ask them a day before it's due, you're getting the template. You're getting the quick. You are not getting that awesome letter, because teachers are so busy. They're so busy. There's so much they have to do outside of the classroom that you want to make sure you give them time to really put their heart into the letter that they write for you. So again, don't get that template, give them time. And that's how you ask for a good recommendation letter. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the personal statement or the college application essay. I usually call it personal statement, but sometimes people don't know what I'm talking about. So your personal statement is one of the most important components of your application. This is where the selection committee really gets to know you as a person. They want to hear your voice in their head. They want to know what it's like to have you sitting at the table. And so there's different types of themes that you can bring into your essay. You know, you can really center on an influential person. You can talk about your leadership, your personal growth, travel, your heritage. There's really no cookie cutter model to, you know, how to write your essay. And it's one of my favorite things to work on with a student, because it's all about just being who you are and learning to tell your story concisely and impactfully. So these are just a few types of themes you can bring into your essay. And we're going to look closer at what is in the essay and some examples of essays that are really pulling their weight, and an essay that's just what you would expect. So a few tips: be clear, concise, and to the point. Right? Great English is concise, active, and clear. If you said it once, you don't need to say it again. Do not go over the word limit. That's a big no-no, okay? Think about this person at the selection committee. They're reading these essays all day. They don't want to read over the 650 words. You have to really hone it in. Make sure you proofread your essay. Proofread that essay. Get people to read it over. I am someone who studied the English language my whole life. I know a ton of words. I know grammar. I'm like a copy editor certified, and I still make mistakes. So make sure someone else reads it for you. It's very important. And you know, ask your family friends who are lawyers. Ask people who write a lot to read it for you. Don't ask the person who hasn't picked up a book in 5 years, right? Ask the people that are going to help you. Start early on your essay. I really suggest juniors, that summer before senior year is the time to start working on that essay. Prepare to revise it at least 5 times, at the very least. Do not mess around with this essay. Don't just send them whatever you wrote the night before. They're going to look at it and they're going to go, because they've seen it before. So start early, and you're gonna really work on it. And I'm going to show you guys what makes a great essay. And so you're also going to avoid cliches. You're not going to put all of your sob stories in there. You can write about conflicts in your life, because I know tons of students who have been through some real stuff, but it shouldn't be written as a victim. It should be written as a victor. How did this conflict make me into this extremely determined, passionate individual who wants to do good in my community? That's how you write about a conflict in your life, okay? You don't want to bring your deep sorrow and just put it on the page. Now, we all have been through stuff, but this is not the place, right? You only talk about your conflicts in order to show how you are the type of person who overcomes. So if it's something that's still a little too raw, don't talk about it. Talk about something else, okay? Or work with a coach who can really help you navigate that. There's also, in the application itself, there's usually a question that says, is there anything else you want to add in the college application? And sometimes, you know, if you have that tough semester where, you know, your grades plummeted, maybe you moved, maybe there was a sickness in the family or something happened, make sure you put it in there on that application when they ask you, is there anything else we should know? If there's that one semester that pulled your GPA down, that's the time to talk about it and say, you know, I went through this, my GPA slipped, and this is how I was able to overcome it. Again, always focusing on, you know, you overcoming and showing your stuff as a great student and someone with purpose. Okay, here's the other thing. Once you write that essay, I'm going back to the personal statement, I'm sorry about that. Once you write that essay, you're going to have that's your template essay. Once you've revised it 5 times, now for each school that you apply to, you want to try to tweak it a little bit. You want to think about, you know, the school that you're applying to, what's their mission? What are they known for? Do some research, and you might tweak a little bit here and there, a sentence here and there, and it would make you a stronger candidate. And last but not least, think of what the question's really asking you. Okay, the common application questions are pretty open and they don't change much from year to year, but you really want to hone in on what is this asking me? How do I as a person explain and describe who I am in a way that answers this question? Okay, again, it's really about them getting to know you. So, general tips: start with a creative lead, start with a creative opening. Use descriptive details. In writing, we say show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. Say it to yourself a million times, show, don't tell. So you want this to read like creative nonfiction, right? You want to bring the reader into the story with you. You want them to smell what you're smelling, to see your facial movements as much as possible. Use concrete examples, cut out redundant sentences. Once you're done with your first draft, go back and look at your transitions. Look at your sentence variety. Are you creating rhythm with your sentences, right? Remember from your writing classes when you looked at that sentence construction, you know, short, stacked sentences, they build tension, they make the reader speed up. And you want to use that to tell your story as much as you can, and vary those sentences with longer sentences. Always use active voice, always. And keep it plain and simple language. Don't overuse a thesaurus, because again, these are very weathered readers, and I'm one of them, and I know right away when a student is using a word that they don't often use. And there's just no reason to pretend, to be someone that you're not. You'll get there, absolutely. So really think about what is your true voice. And then make sure you have a strong conclusion. So these are the things you're going to look for as you're revising. What did I say? How many times? 5 times. That's right. Okay, this is one of the most important essays you're going to write in your lifetime. So here are some questions that you can brainstorm to get yourself started. And I encourage you, screenshot this. Go ahead. Here's some ways to brainstorm the personal essay. Details of your life, people, places, events, circumstances that have really shaped it. What are the turning points of your life? Obstacles that you've overcome, cultural opportunities or professional opportunities, perspectives, philosophies, and your major goals. Once you're clear on this stuff, you have kind of the nuts and bolts of what might go into your essay, but not all of it can, right? Okay, so let's get into it a little bit. Here's an open-ended question. These come from the Common App, and you can choose one of these to write on, and there's more, right? When you go look at the Common App, you'll see there's a number of questions, but these are ones that students often use. So some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, please share your story. 2, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So I work with a lot of students who write their stories, and I'm going to right now tell you that obstacles one, that's the conflict essay. This is a conflict essay that you should write. Surviving the earthquake in Haiti. This is a conflict essay you should not write. Failing your first test. I've seen it. It doesn't work. Okay, that's not one of those life obstacles. It might have been really tough for you to overcome, but I've had a student write I failed my first test essay, and I told her no. And that essay, she rewrote it, and she ended up getting into UF, so we're really proud of her. But really think, this is an obstacle that I have overcome. It's not something that everybody goes through. Okay, so those are a few questions. Now, of course, I hope that most of you have learned, how to brainstorm your essay, but here's a little outline, and in the packet that I'm going to give you, you're going to get this, and you can, make some notes in it if you print it out. So of course, we're going to have broad topics. We're going to have the circumstance or event, any unique points. These are, again, just putting together the nuts and bolts of what you're going to put in your essay. And then, we'll start looking at the essay. But as far as the routine and the process of writing, once you do all the brainstorming and you hone in on what those potential nuts and bolts could be, and you pick a question to answer, I want you just to write without thinking about it. Just get your ideas out. Because once you have it all on paper, you can always move things around, but just know that your first draft is not going to be perfect, and that takes the weight off your shoulders that it's not going to be perfect. You can just get it out, and then you can revise, because we all know we're going to revise it at least 5 times, right? So let's look at, and I hope I'm doing okay with time, Anthony. You just give me a shout if I'm not. But let's just look.
Good. I don't like to mess up the flow, but I've been around you a few times. I think you can roll with this. I'm going to throw out a couple of questions that I think are relevant to your presentation, that maybe if you're willing to answer, we could do that. Otherwise, I'll save it till we finish.
Okay, so I was going to go in and show some examples of a good college application essay and a not so good one. I can save that for later, or
let me give you 2 questions, and then we'll go right back to the presentation.
Sure.
You touched on this, but this keeps coming up in the Q&A, which is why I thought it would be important, because they're going to be distracted and they're going to miss out on this. Okay. What's the main thing colleges look for in your essay?
I don't think there's just one thing that they're looking for. They're really looking to get a sense of you. So they want to know who you are. and they want an essay that stands out. So if you can talk about who you are within the framework of your experiences and one of the questions, and you can bring your story to life. That's what they look for, is that your story is brought to life. It's not like a main thing, like everybody needs to have this one thing in the essay, because there's no cookie cutter student. It's really about who you are. So I would say authenticity and impact.
Would you expand a little bit more on that as it relates to, because I think you're almost about to say what I think they need to hear. What's the purpose of an essay?
I mean, it's to communicate something, right?
Yeah.
You're leading me. I think if I show them examples, it might come out.
Okay.
It's to entertain.
Well, no, well, like, because you and I speak the same language. It's not just an essay. We're talking about the personal statement, right? Yeah. So like when we're working with students, like what do we, when we try to describe to them, this is what a personal statement is. I think that answers the question. And you said it in your presentation. So I'm wondering if you could just say it one more time. What is the personal statement?
Like, it's your personal pitch. I don't know, it's your personal pitch. It's like a cover letter meets your personal story.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. Rotate. Go right back to the presentation.
Okay. So, thank you, Anthony, for clarifying that. And I think it's important that that is clarified. So I'm going to pull up. Is this working? I'm going to pull up these essays, and I just want to show you. This is like a typical essay. Can you guys see this? This is a typical essay that you would see. Okay, so ethical dilemma. I'm just going to read the beginning because I just want you guys to see the differences in these two applications. Okay, the most significant experience I've had is one summer when I got lost in the wilderness with my dad. One significant experience I had was when I camped out in the wilderness with my dad for 2 weeks last summer. That was a very buggy experience, but more than the leftover scars from branch wounds and brambles are left with me. I think I grew up on that trip. I had never camped before, and now my father thought it would be good for us to bond away from civilization. We packed and headed out, not for a campground with tent sites and shower rooms. We headed for the back regions of swamps and raspberry bushes, at least 1,000 miles from home and regular communication. So this topic is good. The writing, not great, right? There's some redundancies. Yeah, some repetitive kind of construction, and then it's just not as impactful as it could be. If this student had brought me directly into the campsite where I could hear what the student was hearing, I could feel the sting of the mosquito, I would be more intrigued to know exactly what the student might have learned on this camping trip. So let me just dig in to what I consider to be a very wonderful personal statement. And we're just going to read the beginning of it. And I encourage you all, I can put the links in for these, but do some research, read some other personal statements. The New York Times every year publishes them, some of the best out there. And so you really want to know what it should look like. So here we go. At age 6, I remember the light-filled openness of the house, how the whir of my mother's vacuum floated from room to room. At 9, I remember how I used to lounge on the couch and watch Disney cartoons on the sideways refrigerator of a TV implanted in a small cave in the wall. At 12, I remember family photographs of the Spanish countryside hanging in every room. At 14, I remember vacuuming each foot of carpet in the massive house and folding pastel shirts fresh out of the dryer. I loved the house. I loved the way the windows soaked the house with light, a sort of bleach against any gloom. I loved how I could always find a book or magazine on any flat surface. But the vacuum my mother used wasn't ours. We never paid for cable. The photographs weren't of my family. The carpet I vacuumed I only saw once a week, and the pastel shirts I folded I never wore. The house wasn't mine. My mother was only the cleaning lady, and I helped. Ooh, don't you guys want to know what happens next? I do. I really want to know because I am in that story. I feel the heartbeat of that story. Did you notice the rhythm the author created by using those timestamps at age 6, at 9, at 12, at 14? We are rhythmic people, right? Anytime you can bring rhythm into your writing, you are lulling your reader in. It's very descriptive. And then we also have this very creative hook in the beginning. We have a bait and switch. Right? We're led to believe that this student lives in this haughty, beautiful home. Nope, he only cleaned that home. So as you go through this essay, I almost want to read the whole thing. It's so masterful. I don't think we have time. But the essay goes on to explain how being in this home that his mother cleaned, seeing his parents work so hard, and seeing this home that his mother cleaned was this symbol of the American dream, right? He got to see these books and these magazines that he never would have seen, and he bought into the idea that if I work hard and I study hard, I'm going to get this. And he says it in such a beautiful way. The professor's home was a telescope to how the more affluent half lived. That's a beautiful metaphor. Their home was a sanctuary for my dreams. Again, a metaphor, right? It was there. I was a glasses-wearing computer nerd. I read about a mythical place called Silicon Valley in Bloomberg Businessweek magazines. He's talking about himself, but he's also showing the committee that he's cultured, that he's aware, that he's well-read. And then, I'll just skip to the end, and he says, ultimately, the suction of the vacuum is what sustains my family. The squeal of her vacuum reminds me why I have the opportunity to drive my squealing car to school. I am where I am today because my mom put an enormous amount of labor into the formula of the American dream. It's her blue Hoover vacuums that hold up the framework of my life. Someday, I hope my diploma can hold up the framework of hers. That's an impactful conclusion. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys what it looked like, right? Because if you don't research, you won't know. So I'm ready when you guys are to go into, the student perspective and to answer any questions. Thank you.
You got time. We're going to hold on. I gave you the ones that were common. There's a bunch more, but we're going to save them for the live Q&A. So if you don't have any more for now, I think we'll move on to our peers, our student presenters, and then we'll come back for Q&A. You good with that?
Yep, sounds great.
Perfect. So I'd like to introduce to you everybody, Manisha. She's going to come on and talk to y'all about her experience. Her current college is University of Central Florida, and she's majoring in primary education, elementary ed. So, Manisha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I had prepared like a little PowerPoint so that people could just see what I'm saying since I can't be on the live conference.
Dan, we got you. What's up? Right now it says navigating the application process.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
So on the second slide, I was just trying to put a little together, just sum up basically what she had just said on how navigating the application process works. So usually, they just ask for the basics, your demographics, your major, your family income, high school achievements, test scores, extracurriculars, and your essay, of course. I feel the most important thing is making sure you have all the information. I know it's a little overwhelming because it's hard to find all this information when you really don't know anything about it. Sometimes your family didn't even know that you needed all of this and they don't have the information on hand, or they don't know where to find it or get it. So I feel talking to your parents and just making sure you can get everything that you need is really important, because it'll save you a lot of time when you are applying for colleges and you're not scrambling or making sure you have the right things, what you have and you know what you want to do. I also found that when I was applying for college, that using the Common App was good because it lets you apply to multiple colleges at once instead of going through one each individual, which is very time consuming, I feel, especially when you're overworked at school with homework, extracurriculars, sports, stuff like that. And it's a free to use website. Some colleges do have application fees, so Common App would tell you if that college has an application fee, but let's hope that they don't. And also to apply early, because there's so many students applying right now, and it's almost really competitive, so you want to get every advantage that you can get and apply as early as possible. That's my experience I've had. And on the third slide, I talk about a little bit of advice that I have when it comes to applying for college. For my personal experience, I did put all of my eggs in one basket, and I really banked on only one college. So I didn't apply to too many other schools to like give me like more range of options. And I didn't get into the school that I wanted to. It was USF, University of South Florida. And it was a devastating day in my life. And I was very, very sad. And I just want to like advise other people, just don't like try to like bank on one college, because you never know what can happen. I feel I was very qualified for that college. I had a 4.0 GPA with extracurriculars, a good essay, good recommendations, and I still didn't get in. And it was very, very sad for me. So I feel like you should just, give yourself as many options as possible, because it doesn't hurt at all to just, apply to as many as you can and just do what's best for yourself. And also, don't sell yourself short. I know when I was in high school, there were so many other kids that were doing so much better than me, and you could just tell that they were so much smarter. They were like on the ball. They already knew what to do compared to me, where like I had to ask teachers and like see what's happening. But you're so unique in your own way that you have no idea. Like just like a great essay could be that one thing that puts you on top and the college will accept you. So really just sell yourself, like boast yourself up. You're gonna get it. And transcripts and GPA can only go so far. You could have a really high GPA with no clubs, and they don't like, some colleges don't value that. Different colleges value different things. So you need to have like the best in every category for yourself and just play to your strengths. And the colleges will see that and they will accept you for, what you have. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
That's good stuff, Manisha. Those are great little tidbits in the beginning, and these are really, really solid pieces of advice for students. I especially like the don't sell yourself short, because we get caught up sometimes, right, looking around us and thinking that this person got it together, and we start to bring ourselves down, and then we miss out on opportunities that are there for us because we're focused on what other people are doing. I like that's a good one. Thank you for sharing. Our next peer that we have coming on is our man Jason J from Lake Tech Firefighting Academy. All right, Jason, the floor is all yours, man. Jay, where you at, man? Did we lose Jay? Team background, let us know.
Anthony, can I add something while we wait for Jay?
Oh, absolutely.
So one of the last student who spoke, and thank you for that, you added such great points to what I had added. It was really wonderful. Thank you. But you said, don't sell yourself short. And I totally agree. And one of the questions in the Q&A was, what if I've just lived a pretty ordinary life? Well, I think that's the answer to that question is, don't sell yourself short. It might be that your perspective is unique, less than your experiences are. So really, just dive into who you are and what you think. Make notes, you might look at the world and have a perspective to share. And it's not so much about, oh, I haven't been through major drama in my life. That's why there's multiple types of questions that they ask you on the Common App. So it doesn't just have to be, I've overcome something. It could be, have you ever thought about it this way? This is how I think. So don't sell yourself short.
Well, everybody, it looks like we lost Jason, which happens in a virtual setting. So we're gonna move to the Q&A. So at this moment, if y'all have more questions that you would like for us to answer, please drop them in the Q&A chat box. There are a few that were already pushed to us, so I'm gonna revisit those and have Christine answer them, because after listening to that presentation, I am not qualified to answer these questions. Okay, so we're going to leave that up to Christine. All right, let's start with a simple one. You ready? Do you list awards and honors prior to high school or just high school and beyond on a resume, on an academic resume? Christine, where you at?
My
You
mute
scared
was
me.
here. Sorry, I'm here. I'm here. It was frozen. I don't know. Anyway, so if it's prior to high school, I would say only include it if it's really special. So if it's something that you just know they have to know about, like, you know, you were invited to go to this crazy research experience at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory or something, and it was 8th grade, and it just cemented your whole, you know, mindset of who you are, who you want to be. Yeah, include it. If it's like I went on a mission trip with my church and it's something we do every single year, you don't have to include the times in middle school that you went. Just focus on what happened in high school. That's really, you know, there's a developmental component to this. High school is the time where students, you know, your brains are developing, you're socially developing, you're kind of moving away from your families and exploring the world. And this is the moment for you to really express what you've learned so far in this personal statement and in your application questions, answers.
Okay, thank you. Our next question. For the application, this is kind of an extension of what you just answered. For the application, what if you haven't joined any clubs, done any extracurriculars, or earned anything? Like, what do you do then? Speak to it, sis. Speak to it.
Well, so I did say one of those main components they're looking for is leadership. If you don't have anything, I mean, not even a sport, because sports are really good too. So I didn't talk much about sports, but they love that. That's great. So maybe there's a sport. If there's not a sport, you know, I have students who I work with that are so busy with life that they can't do as many extracurriculars. They're working, they're watching their siblings often. So I think that's leadership within the family. And you can talk about that. Like if your parents are working multiple jobs or busy and you're picking up the weight at home or the part-time job, that is high achievement, that is leadership. So talk about that. If that's not the case and you've just been sitting at home after school and playing video games or whatever, maybe, you know, again, go back to that perspective. What perspective do you have to share in the world? And I really, for those students who are younger, start reading, right? Start reading and developing your mind and having opinions about the world. Read, you know, things that are a little bit above your depth in complexity. Read the New York Times, read the Wall Street Journal. Start asking your family, friends, aunties, uncles questions about the world. Engage respectfully, and you know, by the time you're ready to write, you'll have thoughts to put to paper. There is so much going on in this world, culturally, socially, politically. I don't get overly political, but there is a lot to talk about when it comes to your values. And so you can focus on your values and how you show leadership with your values and just the type of person that you are. Okay, I think that's the answer.
I like it. I got another one for you. They coming with these scenarios, so be ready. Be ready. This one's a good one. I was sitting here like, how would I answer this with one of my kids? What if you don't feel like your personality won't translate well into a college essay? Colleges seem to want optimists and positive thinkers, but that's simply not who I am. You say they want authenticity, but doesn't really feel like they do. So
be yourself. First and foremost, be yourself. If you're a cynic and a skeptic, and maybe you're a little funny, humor is really one of the hardest things to do in an essay, but if you think you can do it and you can pull them in, at the end of the day, it needs to work. So if that's who you are, you write from your voice. Don't try to be something you're not. Yes, in general, we want optimism, drive. But if you are also just that type of person that looks at the world a little bit differently, maybe that's your edge. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Christine, would you think it's safe to say too, we talked about this a little bit last night on the Explore, Dr. Stirk had mentioned what I had coined as personal social fit, like if that school fits your personality and who you are, because every school does have a different type of student that's there. There are some schools that just kind of like accumulate all different personalities, but then there's many schools that are like, this is the kind of kid that goes to that school.
Yes. So that is so important, because college is a time for you to, first and foremost, expand your mind. Secondly, expand your social network and really blossom into who you're going to be. You want to find a fit that's right for you. And it's culture. It's also location. There's so much to think about. So I really encourage students to talk to student ambassadors and ask those questions. What's the culture like on campus? Another question I always tell students to ask these student ambassadors is, what does everybody complain about? Like that's what you want to know, because student ambassadors love where they go to school, and that's why they're doing this, presenting to potential students. So you want to hear what they love about it, but then you want to ask them, what is the one thing everybody complains about? And so that you know what you're getting into. You also want to think about diversity. And another thing that I love looking at is retention. So you can go to the College Navigator, which is a government-run site, and you can compare schools and you can look at their retention rates. Now, there's transitory schools which will have more students leaving, but you really want a school that's retaining most of their students because they like it there. So that's something to look for too. So can I answer a question that I saw earlier, and I want to make sure it gets answered?
Yeah.
So someone asked, how important is my school rank when I'm applying? And it's not as important as you think, to be honest. I just had a admissions panel with UF, and they said the first thing they do is unweight everything that you've taken and just level the playing field with the GPAs, and then transmute your GPA into their standards for grades and look at, well, what would their GPA be here? So your rank, if you go to a small school where you're a star student, you might be in a big fish in a little pond. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a little fish in a little pond. But just know, depending on where you're going, the pond is going to change. And the admission counselors know that. So if you're number one in your school, but your school isn't that, high performing, it's great that you're above average. That is awesome. But it doesn't necessarily matter when they're looking at you across the board outside of just your school, but they do take your school into consideration.
How many colleges do you think students should apply for?
That's a great question. So the national average is 3. I say double it. Right? If the average is 3, double it, triple it, apply to 6 or 9. But really think about, when you're focusing on which schools you want to apply to, know which one you really want to go to, and make sure that's the one you get the early decision deadline in on, which is usually November 1st. So I know you'll probably cover this next week or tomorrow and the following day, but early decision is usually November 1st. FAFSA starts October 1st, and that is one of the most important deadlines. So don't sleep on that one. Get in the beginning of the line, not at the end. And then usually regular decision is January. So that, you really want to make sure those schools that are number 1 on your list, you get your application in first.
Listen, this participant dropped this question. I think you and I can tag team on this. He says, or they said, I have only been a part of one sport during my 3 years at high school. I have no other clubs and activities, but I have a TikTok account with 50,000 followers where I teach math topics. Is this something I can build off of?
Yes, that's amazing.
I was reading this, I was like, bruh, I only have 460 followers on Instagram. Like, you're doing something, you're making an impact. Yes, that counts.
Yes. Yeah. You're teaching math on TikTok?
Yeah.
Stop it. You're killing it. That's such leadership. That is using the cultural zeitgeist and blossoming through it and really trailblazing. Hooray for you. I love it. I wanted to add one thing about the application timeline. Another way, if you feel like you might not be a star candidate to the school you really want to go to, one little tip is to apply to the summer term. It's a little less competitive. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Instead of applying for fall, some schools allow you to apply for summer, start early. It's a little less competitive. So there's a little tip for you guys who just don't feel like maybe you're that student. And there's a path for every student, y'all. Don't be ashamed if you got to do the 2x2, or if you want to do, you know, if you get a certification and then you go back. I always say the path to success is not linear. All right, we don't all fit into the same box. So
we had a participant ask if they could add award nominations, and I'm reading this and I'm thinking, I'm wondering if they're asking if they should add it to their personal statement, or what I typically do with students is have them add that into their academic resume. But exactly. wanted to get your feedback on that.
That's exactly right. Put it on the resume. Yeah. Because
that goes back, I imagine that goes back to when I had interrupted you earlier, when you was like, the personal statement, it's about you, right? Like, it's your story. It's what has impacted you to make you be who you are. So the award nominations, let's keep that separate. We want to tell the story. What did the awards come from? What were you involved in? Why did you get involved in that? Like that, let's backtrack. Let's use that as the starting point, but then let's work backwards. What even got you into where you're getting those awards and things like that? And let's talk a little bit about your passion behind that. That's what I would say.
Right, absolutely. What's your passion? What's the story that led to that? Absolutely. Yeah, you can certainly focus on winning an award for your statement, but it really is, like you said, that backstory that matters. Another question I saw, this is a little tangential, but there was a question about deferring and whether students should defer a year and not go to college right away after high school. So here's my answer. Once you stop being in the academic routine, it is so hard to start again. And your mind at 18 is in full-fledged development mode. It is your potential to expand your mind is greater than it will ever be, right? Between those years, 18 and 25. So capitalize on that time and keep your brain growing and learning. There is nothing like a college experience. So I really encourage you to go wherever, whenever you can go immediately out of high school. And this is from someone who had to be talked into not taking a gap year by her brother. So that's my advice. College is amazing. If there's some other issues going on in your life and you know, maybe you're struggling, maybe you're really struggling with depression, you need to focus on your health first, by all means, that makes sense. But I would encourage you, take one class at the community college, work, don't just let your mind fester, right? And don't get distracted by people who are partying and who are not working on themselves. If you're in this kind of in-between mode, and always get back to it too. But it is dangerous to take time off. Now, if you're taking a gap year because you're in this amazing fellowship program where you're going to some other country and doing research, take that year off. But you got to do it for a reason, and you have to continue to be expanding your mind. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, but what you say, I want to reframe it, because they're not really taking a year off. They are expanding their mind, right? Like it's an intentional learning experience where they're growing. Maybe their passion is being deepened or it's being discovered. So like last night we were on and we were talking about the 4 E's, and I don't typically call them the 4 E's. I call them the 3 E's because I don't like to talk about expiration, that gap year. But we got to start talking about it, because a gap year can be beneficial to your post-secondary education. It's just got to be intentional. You got to be putting yourself in a place where you're growing and exploring, not the okay, I've done my 13 years of school, and I need to take a break, I'm done. Like that's not yeah, that's not the thing right there. I used to tell my kids, we ain't graduating sitting at home on mama's couch eating hot Cheetos, playing Xbox. We ain't doing that. That ain't
right, Anthony. The thing is we know the kids who do that.
Yeah.
Right. So here we are on the other side of that hill. We know those kids, good people, high potential. If you are that kid who's sitting on their mama's couch eating Cheetos, playing video games, and doing whatever else, Like it's just a hard cycle to break. I really encourage you guys, surround yourself with people that are moving in the same direction with you. Right? They say you're the summation of the 5 people you hang around. If you look around yourself and all 5 of your friends are not applying to college, you better find some new friends. Okay? Get with people who have the same goals as you.
Yeah, I agree. There's a couple more around, like some more essay stuff. So I'm going to drop these in your lap too. What if different colleges that I'm applying to have different standards for the essays or grades? Do I have to change my essay length and all that for each of these colleges?
If it's through the Common App, it's just the one. It's just the one. And that's usually what it is nowadays. You guys are lucky, not my day. My day was different for everybody. But it's pretty much 650 words, and you answer one of those questions. If there's a college that does not require the essay and you've written it, go ahead and send it. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. It might make you stand out. So I really encourage you guys, don't do the least, do the most. It's really that competitive. And the other part about working on a personal statement is that it's really beneficial to your own self-growth. So whether you're applying to college, whether you're not, the process of reflective writing, journaling is healing, it's mind expand, it's just good. So it's not a waste of your time.
So what about a student that writes a really dope personal statement? Are they allowed to use the same one for multiple college admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you do is you get that amazing essay, you make it just right, and you let people read it and they go, wow, this is really good. You go, thank you. And then you take it per college, and like I said, for every school you apply to, you tweak it just a little bit. So maybe it's you emphasize a certain value, a certain leadership experience for different schools because you know that is something that they really value because you've spoken to a student ambassador, right? Or you also can take that essay and then you use it as a template for those scholarship essays, and you just bang them out, and then you have money and you're going to school for free, and that's what you do, and you act like it's your job because it's one of the best paying jobs out there.
So how do you advise a student that wants to apply to it? That was so good. I'm so sorry. Back on track. Focus. How do you advise a student that wants to apply to a college but doesn't meet all the requirements of a college? What do you say?
I think if your personal statement, okay, so let's talk about rehabbing your application. If your GPA is not great because you just didn't apply yourself, you know, there's those people out there that are so smart that they don't apply themselves. There's this like thing that happens, but you know that you have potential, and my hope is that you have a high SAT or ACT score too. Because if maybe your GPA is not that great, but you have a good SAT score and a knockout personal statement, you'll be okay. That's what I found over and over again. Really, you know, scores are going out of fashion. We all know scores are tied directly with income bracket, and you know, there's some data that shows they do show how prepared you are for college, but they're problematic. So a lot of schools are not really focusing on them as much, especially in the time of COVID. They really want to see your leadership. They really want to see your personality. They want to know that you're into your own mind expansion, that you are pursuing rigorous avenues for academic growth. So maybe you've taken a few, like you got into AP computer science and you got an A in that, but you didn't do so well in a lot of other classes, but you're really passionate about this one thing and you know that you're smart, right? That personal statement, if it's a knockout, like that is one of the quickest ways to get yourself put in the list of students they're considering. Because you got to think about it. Again, the selection committee, they're reading these essays over and over again. They look the same, y'all. They look the same. I've read so many of them. They look the same. But when there's a knockout, you're like, oh, and these are nerds. These are people like me, people who like to read. So you pull them in and you're like, I know how to write to make you want to read what I wrote. and you got us every time if you can write. It's one of the most important skills out there. So I'm just being honest. That is one of the most important parts of your package. It is.
That's a good answer. For our participants, just want to let you know, tonight runs to 7:30. It's 7:30 right now, but we will stay on for the next 15 minutes. If you want to stay on, we'll continue to answer questions. We have a few more that we're going to go through. We do want to encourage you. Tomorrow night is fun. So if you want to know how to fund your post-secondary education, tomorrow night is the night that you'll want to get on, as we'll visit the three major ways to fund and what you need to do to get through all of that. So encourage y'all to register for tomorrow night. Those of you that want to stay on, stay on. Those of you that got to get off, deuces. Thank y'all for being on.
Let me just tell you that Path to College offers this 4-week workshop, kind of similar to this one, constantly. So you can go to our website, click on our workshop tab, pathtocollege.org, and you can apply. You can register for free SAT prep. You can do our 4-week workshop that is similar to this, where we go through, you know, what to look for when you're looking for a college. We start with a career aptitude test. We teach you how to look. We do this application workshop where we actually get you writing with you. And then we talk about entrance exam tips. And then we talk about paying for college. So I encourage you all, definitely come tomorrow, definitely come the next day, but just know pathtocollege.org has workshops continually, and they're very hands-on. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that the buck doesn't stop here.
Good plug. I like it. We're going to jump back into these questions. So this one, I think, is an extension to the positive outlook one. They added a little bit more to this. They said, what if I'm not the best with leadership skills? It seems like colleges are looking for leaders, which I lack in. What do we say to that student?
Well, I asked that student what year you are, because if you are not great in leadership skills and you are a freshman or sophomore, it's a great time to start developing them. And your essay might be about breaking out of your shell and learning those leadership skills, how you pursued it. You know, I started reading this person. I started asking my coach how to inspire others. I started standing up and volunteering my time and services in clubs, and I started developing leadership. So anybody can lead, and leadership is not always being the leader. Sometimes it's being the person who is within a club or within an organization that watches and notices those who are new and struggling and goes out of your way to shepherd and teach those. That's leadership. Doesn't mean you're always in charge. There's so many ways. So I encourage you just to go look up leadership. There's so many leadership quotes out there. Start to learn what the language is. And don't think that you're not a leader, because you probably are somewhere in your life.
Great answer. How do we advise students that, you know, because of the pandemic, aren't able to be a part of extracurricular activities? They're seniors, they got to write about it, they've missed a year. What do we say? Or even our juniors, maybe we have sophomores, like this could be underclassmen too. Like, what do we say this lost year for them?
I say do whatever you can not to lose that time. So I'm a big no excuses person, and there's plenty of opportunities for leadership right now, virtually. So we learned about our friend who's doing the TikTok math tips. That's leadership. That's leadership that you can do during a pandemic. So I encourage you to figure out what you can do in the pandemic that's leadership. Maybe it's just starting a weekly FaceTime group where students can talk about their mental health. Don't fall into this is a lost year. This is just a different year. So how you pivot, how you adapt is very important. And I'm not trying to say if you don't have the bandwidth to do that you're no good. I'm saying that might be the case, and that's okay, but I'm saying don't use that as an excuse. Don't write the letter that your senior year was trash because of COVID, because guess what? It's a worldwide phenomenon, right? That can't be everybody's reason, because there are kids out there innovating right now. So I encourage you to really dig deep and think, okay, how can I show leadership right now from my living room? Maybe with my friends, we're just gonna, like I said, group up every week or every other week and talk about what's bothering us. That's so simple, and it's leadership.
Yeah, Christy, I heard a lot of people talking about coming out of 2020. You should have learned a new skill, something new you should have added to your toolbox, right? So you're saying that, and I started thinking about last night we were on, and Dr. Stirk was talking about all these different websites that offer free online courses. Like even that, like maybe you're not the go-getter people person, you got to be taking the lead or being in a club. Maybe it's just you're getting on and you're learning a new skill. You're learning how to code, you're learning how to read and write music, something. I mean, there's so many free courses that you could take. Maybe it's just adding to your repertoire, showing that exploration side of who you are and just putting yourself out there to learn something new. Maybe it's something like that. Maybe it doesn't have to be like the traditional leadership that I think most of the students are asking us about.
Absolutely. There's so many things. So our students, they did census shout outs. So they were going to go door knocking to tell people about the census in the hard to count communities. Well, COVID ruined that. So they did TikToks and they did videos talking about the census, right? You can call a retirement community and say, are there any elderly people there that don't have somebody to talk to right now? Because they're isolated. There's so, like you were saying, there's so many ways. Learn something. There's something that you can do. Maybe it's picking up trash in your neighborhood. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you have to do something. And the workshops are free. I see that question coming up. I'll put the link in. I don't know if this is the right spot to put the link in, but there's the link.
Okay. I was just about to ask you that one too. I was like, let's go back to your plug. People want to know if it's free or not.
Yeah, it's free to do SAT prep, and we do a 4-week workshop that's very hands-on, and it's similar to this, but it's a little bit more hands-on. So do this first, though. don't not do this. Do this. This is great. You never get people all over with this skill set coming together to do this. So thank you to Florida College Access Network for putting this together.
So a student asked, and you kind of answered this, so I'm going to try my hand at this, and you tell me if I got this right or not. A student asked if there's any tips to getting into one of the more highly competitive colleges, Columbia, Harvard. I think this goes back to what you were saying about getting in touch with those student ambassadors, reaching out to the advisors. They have regional advisors. They'll be upfront with you about that. And those colleges are really good examples of there is a certain type of student they are looking for. It may be your dream college, but it may not be your cup of tea. Like, them ain't your people, So being able to take visits, and if you can't take a visit, being able to reach out to student ambassadors that can talk to you about the culture and the life on campus, that will reveal to you whether or not this will be a good fit for you. And if it's not a good fit for you, then you move on to the next one. You don't want to force a round peg in a square hole. Is it vice versa?
So I'm going to add to that and give you a really good piece of advice. But first of all, I'm going to say that those Ivy League schools, they want diverse students. So there's definitely a culture on campus that you want to be aware of, but there really is room for everybody there, and they've got great endowments and whatnot. So everything I've said is really about how to be your best in the application process. So everything I've said really applies to those schools, plus this. When you are looking at a competitive college or an Ivy League college, do your homework, and whatever program you want to go into, research the department head's research publications. You want to know, if you're going into chemistry, if you're going into political science, who's the person, the professor over that department? What have they published recently? And you're doing this for yourself, because if you get into one of those schools and you're studying foreign policy or biology, everything that you're going to learn curriculum-wise is colored by that person's research. So this is that standing on the shoulders of giants thing that people in academia talk about. You are going to be kind of underneath in tutelage the curriculum from these people. So you want to know what you're signing up for. When I went to college, I went to the Wilkes Honors College at Florida Atlantic University. Incredible school. I loved it there so much. And I studied political science. I did not know when I signed up that I was going to learn a whole lot of punishment theory, because that is what Dr. Mark Tunick, the department head, researches. And I love it. Was so interesting. I'm so glad I learned. I fell into it, but it would have been better if I had known ahead of time and I had said, oh, I like that. I want to learn that. So, part of this is choosing your path, and part of it, your path reveals itself. So the other thing I just want to say again is that no two paths are alike. And if you don't get what you want, you're just being steered into another direction. So stay positive, right? It's not the end of the world if you don't get into your dream school at the end of the day. You can still go to college.
So how do you advise students that have 2 majors in mind? How do they even begin to pursue that? What does that look like for them?
Well, I would suggest that you make your best pitch for one of the majors. So, and again, if you know the professor is going, if you look at your volunteering and maybe did an internship or the classes that you've taken, and you really want to focus on the one major that you know that you seem like the best candidate for, because you're just trying to get in, y'all. Okay, you just want to get in. Once you're there, you can bring in another major. Now, if the 2 majors are aligned, maybe it makes sense to talk about them both. But I don't think it's so important to say, look at me, I want to do 2 majors. I think it's important to really show them that you're the right candidate for that major. So you have to think about, who you are, what you've learned, and how that all builds into what you're applying for. So I was somebody, I studied political science and I got 2 minors. And again, it was through my experiences. I ended up doing a study abroad. I learned another language, so I got a minor in German. I got a minor in women's studies because it was just something that was so interesting to me. I couldn't help but take the classes. So you're going to learn a lot. You don't have to know everything. You can't know everything about who you're going to be when you're applying. You just want to give them your best package. Get in, then you can do whatever you want.
Okay, I got 2 more questions for you. The first one, maybe we don't get to the second one, but the first one I want to ask you, I feel like it's a trap question, so I'm curious to see how you answer this. It says, my mother always said that she doesn't think that it's good for a child to go away for the first year of college because they can mess up. Due to the feeling of freedom and the independence you have, what do you experts think?
I'm going to be real right now. So doing your first year on campus is an incredible experience. It is a bonding experience. You meet lifelong friends. I'm really pro going away to college. I'm pro living on campus. I'm just going to say it because it's the whole experience. That's not everybody's experience, but there's something really special about that. But some mamas know that their kids are not ready for that. Everybody develops differently. We all have asynchronous development. We're not robots. So maybe emotionally, you're not ready. You have to know yourself. Again, maybe you want to stay local because you want that extra family support. It just depends. Some kids are really ready. Now, there is that archetype of kid goes away to college, has never done anything for themselves, and just starts partying, doesn't do their laundry. And there's a little bit of that. Everybody has that moment of, oh, I'm doing this for myself. Am I sick? I need to go to the doctor. Like all these little things that make you an adult. It's part of it. It's part of it. It just is. So my advice is to put school first year always, because you are going through a transition. And then also in high school, that's the time when you're supposed to start developing those independent skills. Like, tell your mama, well, it's time for me to do my own laundry and cook for myself, so I'm ready, right? And I really think 16 and on, parents need to start pushing their babies out of the nest. But again, no student is exactly the same. So that might not be right for every student. So there's no cookie cutter answer.
That was a skillfully crafted answer. Thank you for that.
I'm a parent.
We gotta go, Christine. That's so good. All right, everybody that stayed on, thank you. There were a couple more questions we didn't get to, so we just want to encourage you to reach out to your college and career counselors, your school counselors. Maybe you have a mentor, anybody like that, to maybe follow up with some of those questions that we didn't get to. Again, register for tomorrow to figure out how to fund your post-secondary education. Thank y'all so much for joining us tonight. We're going to go ahead and sign off, and hopefully we'll see everybody back here tomorrow. Same party, same time. Good night, everybody.